Reproduction in plants.
Introduction. The process by which a living organism produces its offspring is known as reproduction. All animals and plants reproduce. There are different modes of reproduction in plants. Plants can reproduce from different parts. The reproductive part of a plant is its flowers. Apart from flowers, plants can also reproduce from stem, roots, and leaves. These are called vegetative parts of plant. Modes of reproduction. Asexual reproduction. When a single parent is involved in the process, it is known as asexual reproduction. Following means of asexual reproduction are used by plants.
Vegetative propagation.
When a new plant is developed by a non-reproductive or vegetative part, such as root, stem or leaf, it is known as a vegetative propagation.
For example, when the tuber of a potato is cut into several pieces and each piece bears an eye, each piece produces a new plant. The stems of money plant, rose, mango, etc. can produce new plants when they are inserted in soil. The leaf of bryophyllum produces new plants through its notches. The roots of dahlia and sweet potato can give rise to new plants. Budding. This method is used by unicellular plants such as yeast. Yeast is a fungus and fungi are also known as non-green plants. The yeast cell produces a bud which gets its own nucleus. The bud develops to certain size and detaches from the mother cell to produce the new yeast. Fragmentation. In some simple plants, the plant body is divided into smaller fragments. Each fragment then develops into a new plant. Example, Spirogyra. Spore formation. Special spore-bearing organs are present in some plants, especially in fungi and algae. These are known as sporangiophores. The sporangiophore bears spores. The spores germinate to develop a new plant. Sexual reproduction. When male and female reproductive parts are involved in reproduction, it is known as sexual reproduction. Two gametes, namely male and female gametes, are formed. The fusion of male and female gametes is known as fertilization. Zygote is formed after fertilization. The zygote develops into an embryo and finally into a new individual. Flower is a special organ of flowering plants, angiosperms, which works as the reproductive system. A flower is composed of 4 distinct whorls. The outermost whorl is known as calyx. It is composed of green leaf-like structures known as sepals. The second whorl is known as corolla. It is composed of colorful structures known as petals. Petals are colorful so that insects and other animals can be attracted towards them. This is necessary for pollination. Androecium. The third whorl is known as androecium. It is composed of stamens. Stamen has 2 main parts. The tube-like portion is known as filament. The capsule-like structure at the top is known as anther. The anther produces pollen grains, which are the male gametes. Gynoecium. The ball at the center is known as gynoecium. It has a swollen base known as ovary and a tube-like structure known as style. The top of the tube is somewhat flattened and is known as stigma. Ovary produces the eggs or female gametes. The transfer of pollen grains from anthers to stigma is known as pollination. Pollination is of 2 types, namely self-pollination and cross-pollination. When anthers of the same flower are transferred to the stigma, it is known as self-pollination. It is of 2 types. Autogamy occurs within individual flowers without the help of an agent. The anther simply opens and the pollen falls on the stigma. Geitonogamy occurs between the anther of one flower and the stigma of another on the same plant. This may require the help of a pollinating agent or can be achieved by gravity also. When anthers from a different flower are transferred to the stigma, it is known as cross-pollination. The flowers can be on the same plant or on different plants. Cross-pollination is the norm in most of the plants. Plants need help from various agents of pollination to carry out cross-pollination. Wind, insects, birds and other animals play the role of pollination. Pigeon Fertilization. The fusion of the male gamete and the female gamete is known as fertilization. When the pollen settles on top of the stigma, it germinates to produce a pollen tube. The pollen tube enters the ovary through the style. Male nuclei are transferred to the ovary through the pollen tube. The cell formed just after fertilization is known as zygote. Zygote develops into embryo. Each embryo develops into a seed. The seed is an embryo which is enclosed in a protective coat. The ovary gets transformed into fruit. Bamboos produce flowers once every few years, and when they do, all flowers of the same species bloom at exactly the same time. Fruits and seed formation. The fertilized egg or zygote divides several times to form an embryo within the ovule. The ovule develops a tough coat around it and is gradually converted into a seed containing the baby plant. In fact, all the eggs in the ovules present in the ovary of a flower get fertilized by male gametes from pollen grains and grow to become seeds. The ovary of flower develops and becomes a fruit with seeds inside it. The other parts of a flower such as sepals, petals, stamens, stigma and style dry up and fall off. Only the ovary is left behind. So, at the place on a plant where we had a flower originally, we now have a fruit, which is the ovary of the flower containing seeds. A fruit protects the seeds. Some fruits are soft, sweet and juicy like mangoes and oranges, but some fruits are hard, dry and woody such as peanuts and almonds, etc. A seed is the reproductive unit of a plant which can be used to grow a new plant. The seed contains a baby plant or embryo and food for the baby plant. The part of baby plant in seed which develops into shoot with leaves is known as plumule, and the part which develops into root is known as radicle. The part of seed which contains stored food for the baby plant is known as cotyledon. The wheat grains, gram, corn, peas and beans are all seeds. The baby plant present inside a seed is in the inactive state or the dormant state. When the seed gets suitable conditions such as water, air and warmth, etc., it germinates and a new plant grows out of the seed. In this way, the parent plant reproduces more plants like itself by forming seeds through flowers. Seed dispersal. If all the seeds were to germinate near the mother plant, the new plants shall not get adequate resources such as sunlight, air and nutrients. For proper growth of the new plants, it is necessary that they develop away from the mother plant. For this, it is necessary that seeds are spread far and wide. The process of spreading seeds to different places is known as dispersal of seeds. Many agents of seed dispersal assist the plants in this process. Dispersal by wind. Seeds of some plants are lightweight and some hair-like or wing-like structures are present on them. Such seeds float on air and are thus dispersed by wind. Examples: dandelion, maple, drumstick, etc. Dispersal by water. Dispersal by water takes place in some aquatic plants and in some which grow near a water body. Seeds of water lily float and thus dispersed by water. The coconut seed has a tough, fibrous covering which has plenty of air inside. This helps the coconut seeds in floating on water. Dispersal by animals. Some seeds have spine-like structures on them. They get stuck to the fur of animals and thus get spread to different places. Examples: beggar tick, xanthium, urena, etc. Some seeds are swallowed by birds and animals along with fruits. These seeds get dispersed with bird or animal droppings. Dispersal by bursting. Some fruits burst open when they mature. The force of bursting is enough to spread the seeds. Examples: ladyfinger, castor, balsam, etc. Dispersal by humans. Human beings also help in dispersal of seeds, especially during farming.